Welcome, everybody, to an episode of Badger Pack Sports. We are actually live tonight. So, really looking forward to hopefully some people jump on here. We can get some comments, kind of get a little bit different input than just me. And as always, my co host, Justin Legal. Justin, how's it going?
Hey, we're live tonight. This will be hopefully a fun group that comes in, and we're ready to talk a little bit of mock draft action. We are officially under the 2 week
Yep.
mark when round one on April 24th in the shadows of Lambeau Field, going live for the draft. I've been ready for this. It's what a weird draft, and we'll get into it. And we're really excited to see who jumps
Yeah.
on and puts comments in on what we should pick. And but yeah, let's roll.
I was going to say, things are always changing with the draft. You think you got it figured out a few months before. This guy's definitely going number one. And then it kind of keeps just rotating. I
Yeah,
think number one's pretty well set now.
I would say so. And I think, and we'll jump into the draft in a few minutes. We kind of want to give folks a chance to pour in. And I would say my initial kind of feeling on this draft is last year was so hyped with the quarterbacks. We
Yep.
had the five QBs go, was it within like the first 15, 20 picks or something crazy? It was absurd, which obviously in a quarterback heavy draft, lots of hype around, a lot of excitement, a lot of media buzz. And, when compared to this draft, it feels underwhelming. But I think, this what's interesting here is, after the first three or four picks, and you'll find in this mock that like they seem pretty rock solid. But
Yep.
after that, man, it can go anywhere, and like the talent is very well spread out.
Yeah. I was gonna say the Tet McMillan fall that's been happening. That one's pretty big. I think Tyler Warren's gonna be an interesting piece. I think he can start as early as 5. Kind of go anywhere in between there. Shador Sanders, he's gonna be a big one. That's gonna be a big question mark there.
Yeah,
A lot of
I'm
a lot
with.
of hype to the Saints there.
Well, and I don't know if you saw with the Saints, Derek Carr. There was some news that broke today
Yep.
with him about his shoulder potentially being out for the season, and that makes things really interesting from a quarterback standpoint.
Yep.
We'll see how the mock goes tonight. And as we kind of transition towards looking at doing the mock, we're not doing any trades. We're using PFF here, the free version, as we always joke on this channel. Maybe we'll get sponsored by them or or
Yeah.
something to pay for the subscription.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do a first round mock with no trades. We may talk trades. We might go a little bit more in depth on some of these picks tonight, just because we're live and want
Yeah.
to see people's feedback, and we want to keep an eye on the comments, and we'll definitely post comments on the channel here too. Um, so yeah, Robbie, what do you want to get rolling here?
Yeah, I say we get rolling. So we'll start it out. Anybody jumps on, we'll just feel free to grab any of their stuff, throw it in there.
Absolutely. Let's dive on in here. We're going to start here at pick number one with the friends in Nashville, the Tennessee Titans.
Yep. I was
I
gonna
think I know
say,
where you're going, right?
yep. Let's start out with Cam Ward, number one, going to the Titans.
Do you think, and again, number one pick is, I think reports have been saying that it's pretty much locked in at this point. I mean, do you
Yep.
see them deviating at all at this point, or do you feel like this is,
But I think the head coach was talking about looking at the tape that he did for Joe Burrow, and you're not going to talk about, looking at what you did for a quarterback if you're taking somebody other than a quarterback. And I don't think they're going to be taking Shador Sanders, number one.
yeah, I'm with you. And we talked about the previous mock, and I went a little crazy, maybe not having them take Cam Ward. I mean, I think
Yeah.
if I was predicting tonight, I think Cam Ward does go.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck on this draft though. This quarterback class is just, I don't feel like there's any franchise difference makers. I could be wrong. I'll eat my words. I'll gladly do that. The Titans are definitely hungry for a quarterback, and their room's a little bit of a mess now with Will Levis, and then Coach Callahan's kind of, I wouldn't say he's coaching for his job, but
Yeah.
a younger coach that's trying to prove himself, and he needs to have that quarterback relationship in the room. So
Yeah,
I'm curious to see.
I kind of heard on the radio they were talking, it's like, is Cam Ward worth a top 10 pick? And he probably is. And so if you're taking a top 10 pick and he's a quarterback, you can take him at number one. And
Yeah,
I agree with
absolutely.
that stance.
Yeah, I'm with you. So now we move to the Cleveland Browns, which is my pick, and honestly, we've been mocking quarterbacks there most of the time, but again, news dropped today. Joe Flacco is coming back,
Yep.
and I feel like again, he's not the long term answer, but I
Yeah.
think sort of setting the stage that Cleveland might be looking at, um, Flacco, and I forgot who they brought in too. They brought in another
Yeah.
veteran to compete in that room, so I think that signs are pointing that they may go elsewhere. And I'm looking at Travis Hunter. He's been kind of uh, the odds have increased in the betting markets for him going number 2 to Cleveland. I know he spent a lot of time meeting with the staff. And the Browns receiver room is pretty decimated. All they got left is Jerry
Yeah.
Jeudy, and they got Njoku at tight end.
Yeah.
But I think Travis Hunter is a really obvious fit now based off kind of the latest we've seen. So we're going to mock Travis Hunter over to Cleveland.
Well, yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, normally, if I've had the Giants picked, I've had Travis Hunter going there, so I think that makes sense. Ooh, and now we go to the New York Giants, and this is where it's, the Shador Sanders question kind of pops up. Um, but I think,
Well, when we talk about the Giants too, Robbie, just that,
yeah,
again, we'll spend a little more time on these picks tonight. We got a little bit of
yeah,
leeway here, but like the Giants have Jameis Winston. The Giants also have Russell Wilson.
yeah,
It's like, do you want to bring in a rookie, especially with this class? I don't know. I wonder if the tea leaves are pointing to not draft a quarterback. I don't know
yeah,
if that gives you any sort of sway in what you're thinking.
yeah. No, I think it does. It's definitely going to be an interesting thing there. And then so it's like, do you kind of build that offensive line, and then you just hope that eventually you get, you know, a good quarterback eventually. It's like, and I don't think there's really a corner. I don't think Jahdae Barron's a top three. It's like that's where I think you would be looking at Travis Hunter there. Um, Mason Graham could be one option there, or maybe Will Campbell. I'm kind of thinking Mason Graham, kind of the top defensive edge right there.
And then Will Campbell, the tackle. I think with Will
Yep.
Campbell, to talk with him again, I feel like didn't we deal with this with Brian Bulaga with the Packers,
Yeah.
the arm length issue? And
Yep.
I feel like, and I'm not in tune enough with Will Campbell. I know people are saying that the arm length is an issue, but I've heard athleticism kind of helps if you have quick feet, you can make up for the
Yeah.
arm length. And if you look at his college stats, and I want to shut down the arm length thing because I mean you're playing in the SEC, best conference
Yeah.
in historically. I mean we can argue year to year, but in the last 10 years, the SEC has been the best conference in college football. 3 straight years of starting at left tackle. I mean,
Yep.
come on now. Um, so he's definitely a solid option. So, what are you thinking that the staff does at the Giants facility here, Robbie?
I think he kind of I go with Will Campbell. I think that's what I'm going to go with. I wanted Travis Hunter, but he's gone, so I'm going to go Will Campbell. Just shore up that offensive line.
Absolutely nothing wrong with building the trenches, and that leaves the New England Patriots. Um, I think just to take a step back, this is a team I think can be sneaky good this year. They built
Yep.
they invested heavily into free agency. They brought Mike Vrabel in, who's just an ultimate culture guy, and he's going to bring stability into a franchise that has still been kind of looking for itself since Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have parted ways. And um, obviously as Packer fans, we don't. The Patriots have always been we've been sort of envy of them for many years of their sustained success. So no one's feeling bad for them. But I think they're at the point now where they're ready to make that turn with Drake May. Um, and again, Mike Vrabel, defensive side of the ball. I'm looking at Abdul Carter.
Yep.
Reports have been coming. He had a medical check actually this morning. I don't know if it occurred this morning, but the reports came out this morning that his
Yep.
foot is healing well, no
Yep.
surgery required. It looks like he's going to be ready to go come training camp. So I think all signs are pointing for Abdul Carter. If the board falls this way, I think New England's jumping for joy to take
Yep.
him, and he's a difference maker as a pass rusher. Um, at Penn State, he had 13 sacks, which is
Yep.
incredible numbers. He's a guy that is just built differently. He just looks different. Um, so we'll gladly at New England take Abdul Carter, which moves us
Yep.
to Duval, or
Duval.
as Coach Cohen says, I don't even know what he said anymore. Duval.
Duval. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Jacksonville Jaguars. Man, see, this is the hard thing because it's like I don't always want to make the same pick, you know, but I still kind of like Tyler Warren going there.
At
They,
5, wow. What's your feeling? And there's been a lot of chatter on Tyler Warren. I think he's a great player. Outside of Brock Bowers, there's a lot of analytics and history that points that first round tight ends do not shake out well in the NFL. And the obvious one's always Kyle Pitts when he came out of
yeah,
Florida, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, he's the next Tony Gonzalez. He's the next amazing talent." And hasn't really panned out. I don't know if that's more of a situation, but there's been a lot of other tight ends that have gone in the first round that maybe haven't, that have kind of underwhelmed outside of Brock Bowers.
yeah.
That gives you any pause with Tyler Warren?
Kyle Pitts to me, he was an ultimate athlete, and I think that was kind of one of the big things. I think Tyler Warren is like the ultimate football player, will play any position. I don't think, to me, he's not Kyle Pitts there. I would definitely say that. And but you look at a guy like Matt Laporta who went to the Lions. If you find a good
Hmm.
role for him, I think the tight end position can still be a huge plus there. So that would definitely be my defense there if I did take Tyler Warren. Tedero McMillan is obviously there, and you got Mason Graham. I think I'm going to go with the safe pick this time. I'm going to go with Mason Graham. You know,
Defensive
go
interior. Yep.
yep, defensive interior. But I
Love the
mean, I
pick.
do like the idea of Brian Thomas and Tyler Warren on the same team.
Yeah. Well, and the receiver room needs help in Jacksonville, and I think there's value in the receiver room, and especially with the Jags, they're picking early in every round. So I think early second
Yep,
round, you're going to find guys like Alec Ioman sitting there, maybe a Luther Burden if he keeps falling the way we're hearing. So I think Jacksonville, go with the less sexy pick, get the interior built up, and teams like the Eagles have shown, if you build the interior up, you're gonna be
yep.
pretty solid. And that moves us to the Oakland, or sorry, age myself there, the
Yeah,
Vegas Raiders.
the Vegas Raiders.
Pete Carroll at the helm. Uh, a lot of people are saying Ashton Genty, and I'm not buying it. I am not buying the Ashton
Nope,
Genty
not buying the
talk.
hype.
I think the draft has so much depth at running back. There's a lot of solid guys you can get later on.
Yep,
I think Pete Carroll being an old school kind of guy, wants to build the trenches, wants to get the offensive line handled, especially with Geno Smith. The Raiders' offensive line's terrible.
yep,
Um, Geno Smith needs time. Geno Smith needs to get into a rhythm. And if you, as you found as in his time in Seattle, when he had time and when he had rhythm and comfortability in the pocket, he was able to deliver throws on time. So I'm looking at Armand Membo, at tackle. I think he's a solid pick here. I think it's, again, no one's going to be celebrating the pick in Vegas, but it's one that I think is going to pay dividends in the long run. And he's right here in the board at number 6. So let's take Armand
yep.
Membo.
Nope, I like that pick. I think that is a good one. All right, now we're gonna move on to the New York Jets.
The Aaron Rodgers-less Jets.
Yeah, the Aaron Rodgers Jets. I think you got Garrett Wilson there, kind of a shorter receiver. I think this is where the Tet McMillan fall ends for me. I like Garrett Wilson with Tet McMillan there in New York.
Yeah, and I think if Membo was still on the board, I think they would have looked at there too. I think that would have been a
Yep.
good pick. But McMillan's there. I think he's an absolute stud. I pray he falls in the draft
Yeah.
selfishly. But yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's a good pick. Justin Fields needs a target alongside Garrett Wilson. And then that moves us to Carolina. Carolina's again another team. Last year, like the first 6-7 weeks of the season, they looked like a CFL or UFL team.
Yep. Did
Bryce
not look
Young was
good.
in Bryce Young was in shambles. A new rookie head coach and Dave Canales. They have a new GM in Morgan. I can't remember his first name. It's escaping me. But
Yep.
a lot of new leadership in Carolina. Dave Tepper's still the owner. A little bit of negative energy there with him, but I think the future is bright. And I'm looking here at the board of who's available, and I think this is where Tyler Warren makes sense. Their current
Yep.
tight end, Tommy Tremble, solid piece. Definitely not a difference maker. Give Bryce Young more weapons. Put him in an offensive scheme. With Dave Canales as a head coach as an offensive guy. So I think Tyler Warren makes a ton of sense here for Carolina.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, Tyler Warren, it's like he shouldn't be falling too much farther than that. All right, and then we got the New Orleans Saints here. And, you know, I, I'm gonna go with the hype. I'm gonna go with Shador here.
Yeah, and we talked about this before the show. The news just broke earlier today of Derek Carr shoulder issue, probably might be out for the season.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, it looks like we got
Also, Dion likes the colors there. He likes the colors in New Orleans.
absolutely, and not much of a color palette change either. Yeah, from
Yeah.
Colorado to New Orleans.
Yep.
Looks like we got some folks chipping in the comments. Maybe Mexico,
Oh,
liking Tyler
yeah.
Warren to Carolina. Yeah, I think that's a great pick for them. Not because I made the pick. I mean, it is a great pick because I made the
Yeah.
pick. Let's talk about it, right? But
Hey,
um,
I made it on our first one, the first mock draft 1.0.
absolutely.
Receipts.
So, yeah, appreciate the comment there. Yeah, Grinch from the Discord. Yeah, we know you, Grinch. We talked to you quite a bit over there at the Baz Packer Discord. So
Yeah.
thanks for jumping on the show. Keep popping in comments, guys. As we continue to our friends to the south, Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the board here. I'm thinking, there's a lot of different options they can do. We got Ben Johnson first year, Caleb Williams year number 2. Um, they're saying needs running back, D line,
Yeah.
safety.
I was gonna say we had our one Bears fan in the one comment saying Ashton Genty if he's there.
Yeah, I'm looking at him, and honestly, I think if he's sitting here at 10, he goes. I just I have a hard time of teams valuing the running back position a whole lot this draft when there's so much depth. But again, if I'm looking at value, I'm looking at position of need. I think it kind of marries
Yeah.
here.
Jahad Campbell there.
Yeah, Jahad Campbell's sitting there.
You got the Detroit Lions that like to run the ball. You like the Packers who like to run the ball.
Yep, and I'm also looking like edge, like a Mike Green. You got 3 potent offenses in the NFC North. Obviously, we don't know how JJ McCarthy is going to pan out, but getting somebody on the edge could also be another option.
Yep.
But I think I'm going to look, and I am going to take Jahad Campbell. I do like that move for Chicago,
Oh.
and I think their defense is historically their identity, and I think Ben
Yep.
Johnson and the staff can get some value in the offense later. So as much as it pains me, with Jahad Campbell too, they're saying reports initially are 6 to 9 month recovery from the draft. They're saying he could be back anywhere from August to
Yep.
September, which I think with his talent, it's worth it. Yeah, it looks like Campbell. We got some agreement there from Baby
Yep.
Mexico. So love the pick there. I would hate it as a Packer fan seeing Jahad Campbell in a Bears
Yep.
uniform. But hey, San Francisco now. What do we got?
Yeah, San Francisco here. I think after losing Shavarius Ward, I'm gonna go with Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan.
Little injury concerns, but
Yeah.
he would have been if he would have went in the draft last year, he would have been a top 5 pick. He was that good.
Yep.
So I think that's a great pickup and Robert Saleh's back in the fold as defensive
Yep.
coordinator. So I think there could be some magic there on defense for San Fran again. The Dallas Cowboys, the Ashton Genty
Yeah.
slip or the fall stops now. Jerry Jones, Schottenheimer as the coach has always been known to run the football, especially his time in Seattle. I can see, one of their biggest needs is running back. Genty and the Dallas Star just makes sense.
Yeah.
And I
This is
think Dak
one that
Prescott.
this is one that started out the year. It was like everyone was projecting this one, and then Genty started going to the Raiders, and it's like maybe it's just meant to be. It's one of the, you know, it just is. It's like
And I think Dak Prescott needs help. I mean, we know he's a very. I think it's fair to say he's a little bit overpaid, but
yeah,
that's the value of the quarterbacks now. I think he's historically been good when he had Zeke in his prime and the good offensive line. So let's get him some help in the backfield, Ashton Genty, and
yep,
move on to the Miami Dolphins here.
yep. Ooh. The Miami Dolphins. This one's hard. Just with the Tyreek Hill comments, do they go for a guy like Luther Burden, who I feel like would be like a similar build there? It's like I know the Discord loves Luther Burden.
I love me some
but
Luther Burden. That's my boy.
so ooh, let's see.
Well, the thing too is like with Miami, man, like their left tackle just retired in Armstead.
Yeah.
They're old. Their defense, I don't even know
Yeah.
who they have on defense anymore. I feel like all their guys
Yeah.
are like I feel like they need a lot of help.
They let him go. It's so weird. Like they're like they get these decent young guys and they go sign somewhere else. Because Javon Holland, their safety, they let him go.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
I
yeah,
think
do
that,
they
that
go?
I'm curious, and I haven't looked this up. I wonder what the win loss total for the Dolphins is coming into the season. I would bet the under on that all day. I feel
Yeah,
like the Dolphins can be a top 5 pick team next year. I they need a lot of help.
yeah,
So with that in mind, I guess. Sorry for any Dolphins fans listening. We've just kind of
yeah,
tanked on your season coming up, but yeah,
yeah,
there's options here, and this might be a spot where they trade back too. If we could trade, they may look
yeah.
to acquire some more picks.
I was gonna say, I think they're gonna go offensive tackle. I think they want Membo to fall, but I don't think he will. It's like
Yeah, let's take a look, and we can take a look at
Simmons
tackles
is
here.
gonna be Simmons is gonna be injury concern there. I almost think Calvin Banks might be the guy.
And he's at versatility too. I mean, I know you can see
Yeah,
his snaps are left tackle, but there's a lot of chatter that he can play, in the interior. And I think I would agree
he's a
with this
younger
pick. And
guy too.
yeah, yeah, I think
I think that
he's
one makes sense. I think I'd
21.
go, I'm kind of gonna go with kind of what I think, and then but also just injury concerns. I go Calvin Banks. Thinks the offensive tackles, it's all personal preference as far as the team goes. So
Right.
I
Yep.
think they take the athlete.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. Yeah, and anything to keep Tua off the concussion list and keep him
Yep.
healthy and upright, especially when you're investing all that money into him. So I totally agree with the pick on Calvin Banks. Looking at the comments here, keep putting comments in if you don't like what we picked.
Yep.
If you have thoughts, we got the Colts on the clock here. And again, another interesting team. They brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson. So like that is there's a lot of interesting things going on there. Looking at their needs, I think they would pray and hope if Tyler Warren would keep slipping, if he
Yeah.
would. I mean, he'd be a great fit here. But looking at what they need, um, they need safety
Yeah.
and they need edge. And I'm looking at edge being, Mike Green kind of coming into the
Yep.
fold here. I think he's a guy that played lower competition. So you look at his sack numbers, at 17 sacks, but if you look at the schedule here, I mean they did play at Ohio State, but
Yep.
relatively soft. So you almost wonder how much is that inflated.
Yeah.
But the
They
tools
went
are
they
there.
went edge rusher last year, back to back. I could see it, hopefully
Yeah,
just try to get it all fixed.
yeah, and you just got to inject that room with talent. And I think edge guys, if you hit on one, then you're set for 10 years, and they're just harder to find in free agency or trade. So I think you just keep throwing darts on the dartboard and you land a guy like Mike Green at the edge and take your chance and see. He's definitely kind of a low floor, but a very high ceiling. It's a boomer bust kind of guy.
Yeah.
Then we're
Then we
with
got the
Atlanta.
the Atlanta Falcons, who this is gonna be kind of tricky here, because you got need at wide receiver, but that's like what kind of wide receiver do they want? So you got
Here's the
Drake London
receivers.
there,
Yeah.
like Drake London there. PFS has Luther Burden as number one, and I think that can make sense with the way Drake London plays, getting kind of a slot guy. I think that actually,
Well, we
I think
got
they have to go Pierce, have to go
Pierce
edge
or
rusher.
Shamar Stewart. So it
Ooh,
looks like we got edge action here. We take a look at the edge guys here.
yeah, no, I think that might make sense, more sense actually there.
And you got Ezra Raku. I'm maybe saying that
Yeah,
wrong. I know there's been a lot of intrigue around him. Smaller guy, but a
yeah.
strong athlete. But
I was gonna say,
James
and you
Pierce
got,
Jr. Very polarizing
yeah.
prospect.
I feel like they do take some polarizing prospects there. I think that'd be their pick. I'm gonna mix it a little bit between my opinion and what Atlanta might do, and I think they go James Pierce Jr.
All
So
right.
thank you, baby Mexico, for the advice. I think I'm gonna go with that one. That's a good one.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the input there. And we move to the Arizona Cardinals. Um, you know, I I personally think Jade Barron
Yeah,
is a little overvalued here. I think he's a smaller
yeah,
guy. I think he could slip into the second round, honestly. So I'm not in love with Barron here. And I know it's a position of need. I'm looking at, defensive line. I'm curious to see what they have for interior. Oh, that's interior O line, my bad. Let's go to defensive interior. And
Kenneth
Kenneth
Grant.
Grant, an
Ooh,
absolute tank of a man.
yeah,
And I think this is where Arizona can come in and help fortify their trenches a bit. Um, I feel like their offense was really never the problem last year. I mean, they had it was
yeah,
very inconsistent up and down. Kyler
yeah,
Murray is just a weird quarterback. I
yeah,
don't know what to make of him.
I
I think their
mean, you
defense
just
needs help.
if Call of Duty stopped coming out, he'd be okay.
Yeah,
But
I would agree with that.
I mean, I think they literally did a study on like when there's double point weekends, like his numbers are terrible, like
Yeah,
the next week or something.
we got to get the young man off of his Call of Duty.
Yeah,
They have Nita, and they also have a Nita, interior O line. But a lot of these guys, you can get them later in the draft.
yeah.
So I think if you're looking Arizona, I think you go with Kenneth Grant here. Um,
Kenneth Grant.
Absolute animal inside.
Yeah,
Moves you over to the Cincinnati Burrow Bengals.
yep.
What
Another
side of the
team.
ball? What side of the ball do you think they need help? I mean, do you think they probably need a receiver, right?
Yeah, definitely need a receiver. Definitely. No, I think we're probably going to go on the defensive side of the ball. Ooh, I do. I like Derek Harmon, so I'm kind of wondering if that's who they should go with. They might go edge though too, just
Let me
because
take a look at edge
it's like you
guys here.
you have Hendrickson, but it's like how long are you bringing him back for?
Well, there's been some smoke around there. I think he's been posting comments the
Yeah,
last few days of like his disappointment at how Cincinnati's handling his whole trade request and
yeah. So like a guy
contract
like Shamar
extension.
Shamar Stewart might look good there.
What do you have to say about his? I think it's one and a half. I haven't seen 1.5 to 2
Yeah,
sacks. You look at the production. He tested off the charts. That's what's
yeah.
weird about this guy. He gives me Lucas Van Ness vibes.
It's weird. And think I've said this before, but the Texas A&M like defensive line had so much talent that none of them produce somehow. It's really weird because like even you look at a guy like Nick Scorton who is high coming out of Purdue, and it's like he didn't have much production either. A little bit more with 4 sacks, but it's like I think his pressure rate was up still decently high as far as Shamar Stewart goes. So is he pressuring the guys and someone else is just getting them? You got Mikael Williams there too. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I just feel like I have not heard a lot of hype about him, but he's obviously there though. It's like I think there's still some hype around him.
Yeah, I think
So
just injury concerns are kind of here, and
yeah,
maybe
I
Mexico
think
likes the LVN vibes with Shamar Stewart.
yeah, spot on with it, but it's like at the same time teams will take him early because of that. All Noble
Noble
Pack,
Paxson, yeah, he
Mikael
wants Michael
Williams is the right.
Williams.
I think Mikael Williams might be the right pick, and this is my problem is I'm kind of going like, what would the team actually do? And I think they're going to buy the hype and they're going to go with Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're looking at the test numbers and they're gonna fall in love.
Just the injuries with Mikael Williams. I'm not saying that Mikael Williams would be the wrong pick. I'm just saying I think that somehow the Bengals would take Stewart over him.
Yeah, and really not a wrong pick necessarily. You're not gonna know it's
Yeah,
wrong until a year and a half into that contract, and you're gonna get a feel of if you really made a mistake or not.
yeah,
But we move over to Seattle. Another interesting team here. I think this is where receivers, the run of wide receivers, kind of start. You brought in
yep,
Sam Darnold. You lost DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett is gone. So Jackson Smith and Jigba is really the only reliable target in the room. And this is kind of where you have a pick of the litter. Like, what kind of receiver do you want? I think Emeka Ibuka makes a lot of sense here, partnering Ohio State guys together. Um, Tons of
yep.
production at his time, 6'1", so pretty good size. You can line him out on the inside and the outside. Matthew Gold, I know you're enamored with him, Robbie. Again, to me, he's kind of like the Shamar Stewart of the receivers, where like he tested off the charts.
Yeah.
Production was good; it was better than Shamar, but it's one of those things where it's like you're kind of taking a risk here. Noble Pack putting in here. Seattle does need offensive line help. If you can take a look
Yeah.
at
We
their
took Banks
tackle.
already. Banks
Yeah,
went
Banks is
early.
off. Yeah, Banks is off the board. Noble, we did. He got drafted pretty
He went
up
to
at
the
13.
Dolphins.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another thing too, where it's like you gotta it's on the board. Josh Simmons, we did discuss him. Little
Yep.
injury concern there. Um, I think I'm liking Ibuka here coming into Seattle, partnering with
Yeah.
JSN. Um, we'll
Ohio
see what
State
happens there.
North.
Yep. So that leaves you with the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yep. I saw this on another mock draft and I was happy to see it because I called it as well. And so I'm gonna go safety here for the Bucks.
And who are you seeing?
Nick
Yeah, Noble.
Emenwarrior.
Yeah, I don't know why PFF is disrespecting
I
this
was gonna
man,
say PFF doesn't like him, but I've seen other people take Nick Emenwarrior as well.
and I think he's the best safety in this draft. My opinion. I think he's a great
Yeah,
fit. Partner him up with Winfield Jr. Yeah, Noble's with you.
yeah,
Noble wants Malachi Starks. Man, I think Malachi Starks
yeah.
is Lewis Scene 2.0.
Ooh,
He is Lewis Scene
ouch.
2.0. I
I
I don't
liked
think
Lewis Cine actually when he came out. That's
yeah. Yeah, and he didn't have a great career
yeah,
at all. Happily went to the Vikings and did not do well, so we're okay with that. But yeah, Nick Emenware I think is, I think he's a lower ceiling guy, but his floor is so
yeah,
high where it's like he can come in and he'd
yeah,
be impact difference maker right away. So
yeah.
Noble, sorry, we're 0 for 2 on taking your guys. Don't
Yeah.
keep putting names in though. Please keep
Oh
popping
yeah.
names in there. But we go off to the Denver Broncos and year 2 of Bo Nix and the Sean Payton marriage. Again, I think you start looking at receiver again here, and I'm looking here at Luther Bird, Matthew Golden. I've been seeing a lot of smoke with Matthew Golden kind of coming into Denver, being a guy to pair up with Cortland Sutton. Um, yeah, maybe Mexico, we're not feeling you, Noble. We do feel you, Noble. Keep putting names in there,
Yeah.
but but I think Matthew Gold makes a lot of sense here. Again,
Yeah.
I think with Sean Payton, he's a very efficient offensive mind. I think he can find ways to leverage the speed of Golden, and I think he can bring another layer to that offense that Bo Nix can, leverage as a young quarterback
Yeah.
and build a good connection there. Noble, Broncos need tight end. Well, yeah, I mean, let's look at the tight ends on the board. We're talking Colson Loveland. He's a guy that's been
Yeah.
kind of, coming in the first round. I don't know. They did just bring Evan Ingram in. I don't know if they would invest a first round pick when they have Evan Ingram. They
Yeah.
signed to a 2-year deal. Um, it's also talking, a slot guy, and I think Matthew Golden here's the play. You can play Golden in the slot and in the outside. There's versatility there with his game. Very polarizing
Yep.
guy. But yeah, we'll go Matthew Golden to Denver.
Yep. And then we got the Pittsburgh Steelers here. This will be interesting. It's like, do they take a guy like Jackson Dart?
Aaron Rodgers mentoring
Yeah.
him,
But
maybe.
Aaron Rodgers, I don't think would like that. So I think they're gonna have to look at getting some talent there. No, we'll go for 3.
Hey, the Bengals start 0 for 3. They made it a playoff push, so keep putting them in
Yeah.
there, Noble.
Yeah. Ooh, this one.
We'll put you on the spot here too, Noble. Who do you think the Steelers should pick? Well, Robbie and I dissect this. We want to hear what you have to think on the Steelers.
Because I got
Yeah,
an
go.
interesting one, but I don't know if Aaron Rodgers would like it.
What's
But
the
I'm
interesting
just
one?
kind of looking at the needs, and maybe I got some Packer bias and just kind of the moves that they've made. But I'm looking at Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina,
As a running back, yeah, and I
running
think,
back. With
yeah, I
Harris
mean,
leaving,
yeah,
I think they got a need there.
he's a big dude, 6'1", 220.
Yeah,
I've heard people call him like a diet Derrick Henry, kind of like that type of build.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, he's got a good build. I think he could be a good back, and they need some O line
again,
though.
Noble's thinking O line help. We can look, maybe
Ooh,
Mexico also same running back or offensive tackle.
I do like Josh
Um,
Simmons. Yeah. No, I think I'm actually going to agree with Noble Pack there. I think that they take offensive line, especially because I think that'd be an Aaron Rodgers type pick there.
Yeah, and Baby Mexico with a good man. I can't say that name with a straight face, dog. Baby Mexico, but we're gonna keep it going. But yeah, they did lose their tackle in free agency. I did forget about
Yeah.
that. I think to
So
Tennessee, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, so they go Josh Simmons.
all right, and maybe Mexico approves. I
Yeah.
think Noble, you can say you're 1-3 now because I think you mentioned
Yeah.
offensive tackle. So all right, the Jim Harbaugh led Chargers. Um, they are not taking a receiver in the first round. I don't
What
think
about
so.
a pass catcher?
That's where I'm looking at a Colson Loveland here.
Yep.
again, we've kind of mocked him a ton here, and I think there's just that Michigan
Yeah.
connection. Harbaugh did recruit him to play. Noble saying Chargers need pass rush. They did lose Bosa. They brought Mack back. There is a need there too. I just don't know. I mean, if we look here at the board, I mean, Ezaraku is sitting here.
Yeah. Michael
Um,
Williams.
and Michael Williams. And again, if you think about Jim Harbaugh, you think about trenches. So maybe Noble, you are swaying me a little bit. I think receiver is a need. I'm not denying that, but I think they'll look in the second, third, fourth round to get some guys later on. They drafted Joel Alt last year in the interior, but they
Yeah.
could have easily gotten a receiver. I think they're in another position here where it's like we need to fortify our interior, and it's like it depends. Like pick your flavor of the day. Like who do you want? Ezaraku I think is a little smaller, probably more of a pass rusher guy. You got Michael Williams, a much bigger frame, and I think that kind of fits
Yeah.
the mold a bit more there, and a little more versatile in a three down defensive end. So let's take Michael Williams. Hopefully his health clears. He's a great player. Great player. Just hopefully health. And it's been a
Yeah.
weird thing with this draft.
And younger, not even 21 yet, so that'll help them. I think that'd be good.
And there we go. We got another one for you, Noble.
Yeah.
And now this is one.
Oh.
Everybody, all the Packer fans here, here's the board at 23. Yeah, let him learn from Khalil Mack. That's a great point too.
I was gonna say, part of me is like, do I take the top guy on the board there and Jade Barron? Does that make sense? He's a versatile guy. He's been able to play in the slot. The Packers like versatile guys. He's 200 pounds. Ooh.
What was his 40 time? Do you remember his 40 that he ran at the combine?
I do not remember what his 40. I don't think it was bad. I think it was like 4.4.
Yeah, let me try to
I
pull up his. I want to pull up his.
It was nothing that concerned me. That's why it's like otherwise I'd remember.
Going to the thresholds of corner. So what Baby Mexico is talking about here, the Packers historically have certain measurables and minimum requirements.
It says 4.39.
Yeah, so 4.4, pretty quick. We'll give him the 4.3.
Yeah.
He's definitely on the smaller end where the Packers historically like to go
I think
for corner.
Jair is only like 5'11" though, right?
Yeah. Here we can just pop some comments in here. So Trey Amos is a name being thrown out there that the Packers would look at. So you can take a look at him. He's definitely a bigger corner.
Yeah. No, I like Trey Amos. I think he's kind of one of those guys that does everything good. I don't think he does anything too bad. I think he does a good job being physical at the cornerback position.
Yeah, and to your comment on Jair, Baby Mexico, dropping a 31
Eiler
inch
says
arms.
take Amos. Oh.
Yeah, Eiler's on the
Okay.
Lots of love for Trey Amos. We can talk him. I will say, if you give me 30 seconds of my elevator pitch of Luther Burden, this is who I would pick. But Robbie's the GM. For those listening, Rob and Baby Mexico, fire up the chat because I know you're with me here. We need playmakers. We need a guy that can get the ball in his hands and make moves and get downfield. Luther Burden is that guy, and I think he can be a punt returner, kick returner, a guy that can line in the backfield, put him in jet sweeps and motion. He reminds me of a lot of Randall Cobb early on, where it's like a shifty, smaller guy, get him in space and let him run and get some yards after the catch. So, that's my little speech. I understand the hand size is small. I get he had some drop issues. There's also some concerns about does he really, does he have character issues? I don't buy it. I think he's an absolute stud, tore it up in the SEC, one of the best receivers in the conference. And I would love Luther Burden as a Packer. But this is Robbie's pick. We'll go back to Robbie. Instant juice in the offense.
I think I would actually like this pick more if the Packers traded back. Yeah. And I'm hearing you on the Packers needing a wide receiver. And so give me Jaden Higgins.
You're gonna jump. You want it? Whoa!
I like Higgins. I'm gonna get my guy.
Okay. A little background on Higgins, 6'4", 215, and it's one of those things too where it's like, so yeah, Eilers, I know you're putting in here, trade back. So we got the free version of PFF. Yeah. So if anyone wants to donate for a paid version, we can do trades.
Yeah.
But we're doing the free 99 version.
I
I
was gonna
agree
say
with you,
maybe next
honestly.
week. Maybe next week I'll bring in the $24. I might have to kick in there for the month. So for next week,
Yeah, maybe we do that just to lead up to the draft. But
yeah,
I would agree with you. I think if this is how the board looked, we'd probably trade back. Um, but you know,
players from Missouri stink. Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying, Eilers. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, players. I mean, come on now, like that's fine.
We have drafted a Missouri receiver before, and it Jamon Moore, and it did not work out.
well, that means we're due to strike gold. But this is your pick. If you're sold on Jaden Higgins, definitely a true X guy on the outside, not a
Yeah,
burner, but a guy that can get possession. Um, Noble Pack wants a make a case for Donovan Ezaraku from Boston
yeah,
College. We will gladly keep looking at these players, and this is a Packer channel, so we definitely can
yeah,
take as much time as we want on this. But I will say for me, I look at the Boston College Eagle. I think of Jeff Halfley. So obviously he
yeah,
was part of his recruitment, very a part of his development. So if anybody has any insight on Ezaraku, it is Halfley. If you actually look too, it's interesting. Halfley was the head coach in 22, had a pretty productive year. He leaves and his production dips, and then 14 sacks last year. Like pretty impressive number. But again, I think the size is the concern with Ezaraku. So, anyways, we'll keep any other names in there. With that pick, Rob is going to be unemployed.
yeah.
Wow,
Man,
that's some strong words
it
from
happens
from.
sometimes.
All right, so we're going to lock in on
Eilers, what do you think about Kenneth Grant going to the Eagles? Or not the Eagles, the Cardinals. Different bird.
yes, pick 16. We
That's
did
what I want
have
to know.
Kenneth Grant. Eilers again. Walter Nolan's a stud. I think the concern with Nolan has been a little bit of character issues,
Yeah,
and some effort, but I like him a lot too. Eilers loves Kenneth Grant for his
yeah,
Cardinals. Donovan Ezra at 16 and a half sacks at Boston College. Trench play wins games. That's what we've been talking about. There's a lot of investment in the trenches on both offensive,
yeah,
defensive side in this draft. That's the theme for sure.
yeah. All I'm gonna
So,
say is
anyways,
about Walter Nolan, Ole Miss defensive lineman, Robert Kimdichie. There you go. It's like that's what scares me there.
so after all this persuasion from other people, are you still locked in on Jaden Higgins?
Ooh.
Are you having any second thoughts?
I guess
Uh,
I'm risking my job. I'm taking Higgins.
all right, we're taking Higgins at pick 23,
I
and
like him
that
better than
leaves,
Burden.
and that's yeah, and I think Higgins is a good player. Um, he's like one of
Like I
those
said,
weird guys. Like,
I'd like to trade back for him, but it's
yeah,
just
I think he goes in the next 10 to 15 picks, in my opinion. So I
yeah,
think it's like if he's there at 23, anybody to trade back with you, then fine. Eilers, nothing says quality trench play like a Big 12 wide receiver from Iowa State.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
preach. So the Vikings, talking about trading, I'm 99.99% sure this pick gets traded back. The Vikings have like no draft picks in this draft, and they need to acquire more picks. Um, Noble's talking about calling me crazy if Vikings take Omari and Hampton. They do have a need at running back. Um, Talking about young stud can learn behind Aaron Jones. I would hate to see this guy in our division. That means the
Yeah,
Bears. Did the Bears get Genty? No, the Cowboys did. So no. But I think that's definitely something to look at. I think this pick
like
does get traded back. Like I'm pretty darn
yeah.
sure.
Vikings
You
need
know,
O line. Do they go
yeah.
Gray Zabel?
And I could see Gray Zabel. I think, and that's honestly who I'd go between Zabel and Hampton. Um,
Yeah,
I think the Vikings have invested a little bit in the offensive line in free agency with Will Fries and Kelly. They brought two guys in that fortify that front a bit. I could see them looking at some value in the offensive line later on. I think a guy like Omari and Hampton in Kevin O'Connell's offense, and you got to remember too, JJ McCarthy coming in as a rookie, he's gonna need help and with
yeah,
skill guys. Um, a lot of thoughts here. Um, Defensive back, we can talk about defensive back for the Vikings. Um, we're looking at corner, we're looking at safety. Johnny Barron's sitting there. Malachi Starks, Trey Amos.
Yeah,
I could see him maybe being looked at too.
yeah. Jahdae Barron's a really versatile defensive back. I could see that one being a pretty good move there.
Yeah. We're going to lock him in here. Jahdae Barron at 24 for Minnesota. Oh, Noble. I hit the trigger too late. I can see Malachi Starks. I'm not high on him personally. I don't see a whole lot. I hope maybe I'm wrong. I called him Lewis Scene 2.0 earlier in the stream, but we'll have to see. But we're off to CJ Stroud's Houston Texans here.
Yep, and normally this is a lock for Emeka Ibuka, but I don't think that's going to happen there. So I think this one might be Luther Burden here,
And honestly, like him on the hip, just imagine him in the turf, like
or it could be Gray Zabel just because protect
when they did lose
C.J.
Laramie
Stroud.
Tunsil
Yeah,
and they traded away. So I like either one of them. I think Luther Burden, like in a dome environment, could
yeah,
be deadly. And you got Indy in their Division Two. It's also a dome team.
yeah,
Or I guess let's take here. So the votes are in here. We got Noble saying Zabel. We got Eiler saying offensive line.
yeah,
Looks like maybe that's where the crew
yeah.
is.
I think you go need there. I think you take Gray Zabel,
All right, Gray Zabel,
Houston.
offensive line. And that moves us over to the LA Rams, the ageless wonder of Matthew Stafford.
Yeah,
I don't know how that guy keeps playing. The dude, I feel like every time when he's at the end of the season, he's like falling apart, but he's ready to go for the next year, and he's an absolute animal. And yeah, that receiver ruined the market. Christian Kirk,
yeah,
that is fair.
Christian Kirk.
Jacksonville very much overpaid
Yeah,
for his services. All right, I think I'm looking here at needs for the Rams. Eilers, I'm curious to hear what you think. I know you follow, and there it is, right
Graham
on
Mertz,
schedule. Graham
Graham
Mertz is the heir
Mertz.
apparent. I
Yeah,
know you follow this division closely, being an Arizona Cardinals fan.
yeah.
Noble saying thinking of Will
Will
Howard.
Howard. Yeah,
That'd be interesting, cat too. I see they have a need at corner. I'm kind of looking at Amos just to help
yeah,
in the secondary.
yeah,
San Francisco has Brock Purdy around. They have Sam Darnold in there slinging the ball. They got Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think they can definitely use some help in the back end. And Trey Amos is definitely a stud. Um, and O line, DB, linebacker.
yeah,
Jalen Walker's a name being thrown out there.
yeah.
I think they
And a
need
lot
more
of
help in the
people.
secondary, personally.
Yeah,
So we're gonna have him take Trey Amos, and we're off
yeah.
to the Baltimore Ravens.
Ooh, the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be an interesting one. Feel like they love going defense.
Yep.
I think this, and some people are saying he's going to go a lot earlier. It all depends on who you look at, but I think this one's going to be Jalen Walker. This is where I take Jalen Walker out of Georgia.
I'm trying to find him in here.
He was there. He was up earlier, up top.
Oh, here I am. My eyes. Yeah, Jalen Walker, another injury concern, but great instincts. Definitely a dude for Baltimore. I mean, they'd be licking their chops having a guy like him. Eiler saying defensive line or Walker, Ravens need offensive line wide receiver. Help out Flowers. I think they can get receiver later in the draft. Zabel's we're starting to see Zabel's name being thrown around more.
Yeah,
We go to Detroit, and they say wide receiver, and I don't really know. They got Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and
yeah,
Laporta and Gibbs. Like I think they're pretty good on weapons this early on. You're looking at edge, and I think Ezaraku is starting to make a lot of sense here. Quick guy. Again, I look at the environment they play in. They're in a dome, on the turf. Like I can just see him just being a menace,
yeah,
being quick off the edge. Again, in a division that a lot of people throw in the football. And Noble, you're saying Kenneth Grant. He already got selected earlier on.
yeah.
I have to look. We can pull up where we drafted him
Kenneth
earlier.
Grant went to the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh yeah, we did cover that. So Eiler's Cardinals took Kenneth Grant. So I think as a rock makes a lot of sense in the division with Jordan Love, a pass happy scheme for Kevin O'Connell with JJ McCarthy in there, and then Caleb Williams. So
Yep.
I think Azaraku is a nice fit there for Detroit.
Yeah. Now we got the Washington Commanders, right? Obviously performed better than expectations last year, so that was good for them. Need edge.
And it says like so running backs one that they talk about.
Yeah.
So Hampton's on the
Ooh.
board. Cam Scadaboo.
I I think that Marion Hampton makes a lot of sense here, is what I'm thinking. I think he's a first round back.
Yeah, I think he would take some pressure off Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Eilers in the chat here talking about Walter Nolan.
Ooh. Yeah.
They lost half of their front seven. Yeah, I know Jonathan Allen did depart.
Yeah. Yeah. With Allen being gone, I could see that.
Yeah, you look at here. So I mean, if you're looking at two positions of need, Walter Nolan. I mean,
Redskins need secondary Badger pack. I agree. I just think we've taken a lot of the cornerbacks that I like so far. Even though,
yeah.
ooh,
And traded Sweat recently. No Chase Young.
I mean, it all kind of depends on their injury. Because go to the defensive backs. I mean, you're getting later into the first here. Do you take a guy like a Benjamin Morrison or a Revel? Revel's 6'2" around there,
There's three.
six foot
Yeah,
three. It's like he was supposed to be a really good defender, and then he got hurt. But it sounds like he's supposed to be coming back.
yeah. He's supposed to be ready to go by training
Yeah,
camp.
I I think that's going to be the move there. It's going to be Siobhan Revel actually. Maxwell Hairston. I I like Maxwell Hairston. That's going to be. I don't have enough information about what's going on the outside there and everything like that on just certain reports on him.
Yeah, yeah. To Eiler's point, Revel hurt. Yeah, he's currently hurt, but
Yeah.
he should be ready to go by training camp.
Yep.
And this is where the Walter Nolan ship stops. I think Buffalo's jumping up and down. This guy just screams Buffalo, just an interior presence. He's a beast. Honestly, this is a guy I could see Green Bay looking at. I would love him at 23 too. So I think this is a great spot for him to fall. Very physical, tough division with New England. The Jets, Aaron Glenn's going to be building a tough culture there. And we don't even know what the Dolphins are going to be doing, but
Yeah.
we'll go. I'm not even going to debate this much. Walter Nolan makes a ton of sense for Buffalo.
Oh. I didn't think that I would be in this position right here with Kansas City, but I kind of want to see what the comments are saying. Who should the Kansas City Chiefs take?
Thank you, Noble. Shout out, agreeing with the Nolan pick to Buffalo. This
Because
is where
I think,
Graham Mertz. This is where Graham Mertz might make a lot of sense for Eiler's
oh
point.
yeah, Graham Mertz right here.
Chiefs need receiver help. Local kid and Luther Burden's on the board. I would cry
Yep.
if I saw my boy go to Patrick Mahomes, but offensive. So yeah, we talking Nolan's point. We're talking receivers and offensive line. Let's just take a look at those three filters and see who's on the board. The offensive line is just oddly graded this year.
Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. Okay.
Yeah, Benjamin Morrison's a stud prospect. It's just that hit. I liked him earlier on, but it's like when you think hip injury for the corner, that just scares me. Like that's
Yeah.
I don't know, like hips. There, you need twitch. You need to be able to be able to backpedal and make moves quick on receivers. I just don't know if that's how long that can nag him. Maybe it's a one-time thing, but I'm definitely a little concerned on that front.
Yeah.
We got Azariah Thomas being talked about as a
Yeah.
sneaky first-round pick.
I was gonna say. I feel like his name kind of dropped off for a while now, because he was definitely
Yeah,
up there.
yeah. I mean, you can see he's ranked pretty high on at 70 on
Yeah.
PFF. My thing is like, how do you feel about taking a defensive player from one of the worst teams in college football in the
Yeah.
first round? I don't know.
Alec from Stanford.
That's
Your
my
boy,
boy.
Alec Manor. I like Higgins better
He's
than him.
right behind. He's right behind Burden for me. So I
See,
do
my
like
thing is
him.
like The guy that I'm questioning because he hasn't been there before when we drafted is Colson Loveland,
The Travis Kelsey replacement.
the Travis Kelsey replacement. I thought more people would see that and just be like, oh yeah, get the replacement for Travis Kelsey. Maybe this guy will actually block in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a pass catcher too, and I think
Yeah.
that could fit well with, you know, Mahomes having another target. I actually wouldn't hate that pick for them at all. Oh,
Oh,
little hate on
Loveland is a
Loveland.
no bueno. Okay, see, I'm go
Loveland isn't that good.
Loveland's
Okay,
oh
we get
oh
wow. All right, we got
well.
strong feelings on Colston Loveland. All right, Robbie, what are you thinking here? You got
I
Starks on
think
the board too. You got Hampton as a back.
I'm going the heir apparent. I'm going Colson Loveland.
All right, let the chat go
He
wild.
might not be that good, but I think, people are gonna want a replacement, and I think they might not hate that. Travis Kelsey, I hear he wants to start a family, so you know,
Yeah, maybe sometime soon. And that leaves us with the Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia. Um, they don't really need a ton. They did lose some edge presence in free
yeah,
agency with um, was that Sweat that signed
yep,
with Islanders
yes,
Cardinals. Um, I'm kind of looking at receiver maybe here to partner with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith.
Smith,
We got ours talking about defensive backs to replace Slay and um, yeah, Sweaty J in the desert.
yeah,
Yep. He'll get really sweaty in the desert. It's hot out there.
yeah. I could see
Nick
Nick Scorton
Scorton.
as well.
Yeah, I mean they definitely need edge help, and we've mocked him. We've mocked Scorton a couple times to Philly, so I think it's a
Yeah,
definitely an opportunity there. Um, this is
I
just a
see
weird spot.
Starks, maybe a Benjamin Morrison.
Yeah, it's like this is maybe where they take a waiver on him. I'm not.
You
I
still
was
get
kind
the
of in
fifth
on
year
him.
option.
Yeah, and he's a guy. I mean, if Morrison comes out of his hip
Yeah,
injury unscathed, and it's like he's back to his normal self. I
yeah,
mean, he's a steal. Um,
yeah. Or Maxwell Hairston. I mean, we know that Philadelphia has taken some guys that, you know, I mean, they got Jalen Carter. It's like after his issue. So, do you take a guy like Maxwell Hairston? Probably, a lot of people say he's one of the top cornerbacks.
yeah, but I'm wondering to like the Starks fall, does it stop? And I'm actually looking at
Yeah,
Noble's comment here, and I think it makes a lot of sense because they do have to replace Big Play Slay. They have some Georgia guys in their defense. I could see this also. He's a strong player. I just don't know if he jumps off the screen, but like he can come into a secondary with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell and be a plug and play starter from day one and just be solid. And I think that's really all that the Eagles need.
yeah,
So I think here this is where I'm going to go is with Malachi Starks at 32.
yep,
And that was our full first round mock. And we're going to let this, let this come out here. And here's kind of the full board here. I know some people jumped in late. Take a look at some of the
yeah.
names. I guess Robbie, what comes to mind here when you look at the board? Like what
Yeah,
screams
I
to you?
think the big one, like I said, was that Calvin Banks going 13 to the Dolphins. I think that's kind of a big one that I haven't seen before. I think I've seen Kenneth Grant fall a little bit farther, but him going to the Cardinals at 16 makes sense.
Yeah.
The Emeka Ibuka one we haven't done to Seattle before. That could be a Luther Burden one. So obviously I made a crazy pick with Jaden Higgins. I get it. I
There's
don't
a
know. I
lot of
like
love for
Jaden
Jaden
Higgins.
Higgins. There's a lot of love for Jaden Higgins.
I think
Um,
big
you know,
bodied receiver in the cold weather.
yeah, and he plays in the Midwest or in
Yeah,
Iowa State. I mean, I think he's a guy that if the Packers would trade back into the late first round, early second, I think that's a guy they're
yeah.
targeting.
Derek
Um,
Harmon falling out of the first, I think that's a big deal. But I think I feel like I've seen defensive linemen fall out of the first, and everyone's like, why hasn't this person been picked yet? So
yeah, a
Harry
little
loves the
chatter here
trenches.
about the Eagles defensive tackle replace Milton Williams. Yeah, I think there's a lot of moves here, and there's a lot of depth in the defensive tackle or interior in this draft. Yeah, Howie Roseman loves the trenches, and that's kind of what they want. That's what they hang their hat on in the Super Bowl to beat Mahomes is their pass rush and interior. I think the big thing here, I guess, when I look at this is I think
And
there's
their
gonna be.
white cornerback. And their white cornerback. I mean,
I still
can't
want a
forget
Cooper
about him.
DeJean. That was my guy in the draft. I know, Robbie, we watched that last year together, and I was pretty
Yeah.
disappointed. I know you were a Nate Wiggins guy.
Yeah.
Um, but I look at this draft. I think the interesting name to follow is Shador Sanders and Jackson Dart. And I don't think we did not end up having Dart being taken. I think there's
Yep.
going to be movement on quarterbacks, especially because of that fifth-year option piece. Um, we're looking. Yeah, I think there's a lot of intrigue there in the quarterback position, and I think Shador has been slowly slipping, and I think people are starting to realize that and are mocking that. And hence the Saints at 9 with the Derek Carr news today. I think that's kind of
Yep.
where maybe the fall stops. And I know there's been a lot of talk about teams trading back. I just don't know. It takes two to tango with a trade, and I don't know if teams love enough prospects to jump up and trade with another team. You
Yeah.
might see a couple. I think the phones are gonna be ringing a lot, but maybe more than usual. But I just don't know if teams are gonna be willing to pull the trigger on trades, and we'll have to see. Um, but this was a ton of fun. We appreciate all the
Yeah.
comments pouring in, the overwhelming support.
Oh yeah.
I think we're gonna do some more of these for sure,
Yeah.
especially as the draft gets closer. Um, Eilers says the Saints want Shador, they'll trade back. That's the risk. How far does Shador fall? Do you love him enough where it's you take him at 9? Um,
Yeah.
are the reports true that Shador can keep falling? I think really that's the intrigue is what happens with the quarterbacks. And I've seen Jackson Dart go anywhere in the top 10 because teams might want a quarterback
Yeah.
that bad. So it's going to be interesting. But uh, any closing thoughts, Robbie, before we end this live? We're an hour
Yeah.
in. This has been a
An
ton of
hour
fun.
in.
It's
No,
flown
this was a
by.
great one. Just thank you to all the people in the comments. This has been fun for us. I definitely think we'll do one next week. Might try to do one before the draft. Maybe when I'm up there for the draft, maybe we'll do one live up there together. So that'll be
And
fun. Maybe get the
if you're going to be at the draft, drop us a comment in this video. Reach out to us on YouTube on our posts.
yeah.
We'll definitely want to hit everybody up, and yeah, we appreciate you, Eilers. Um, Let me know, Eilers, if you're coming up for the
Yeah.
draft. That'd be a lot of fun to meet up. And if there's other ideas for lives and videos, again, we're a new channel. We want to interact with fans and have fun.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of this, and just to break down various different topics. So right now we're heavy in draft season. This is Robbie's favorite time of the year. Yeah, Eilers, he's going to be
Wow.
at the draft, so we're definitely going to
Yeah.
link up with you, and
Yeah.
um, maybe we do a little live reaction from the Packers draft pick, whether it's at
Oh
23
yeah.
or whatnot. So
Yeah. No. So thanks for everyone who came out. Just fun times, and let's get ready for the draft. See you next time.